A vacuum pump needs to be tested regularly to make sure that it has the capability to pull down to enough of a vacuum to remove that moisture. A lot of vacuum pumps will pull enough to get rid of the air, but they won't pull down low enough to eliminate that moisture. And so we want to get down to at least 500 what's called microns. Micron is a measurement of how much vacuum we have on the system. And so this is a micron gauge, and we're just going to hook it up to our pump and to see if the pump just pulling by itself, if it can pull down to at least 500. If it can't pull down to 500 just pumping into itself, then there's no chance that it can pull down to 500 on an actual system. And so to do that, we're just going to hook up directly to our pump. And we want everything to be good and tight. This one has a valve for on and off, so we can turn the pump off. So right now it's in the off position. I'm gonna turn it on. So right now, I hope you can see that, but it's just reading a 1. That's no microns at all. Basically, that's atmospheric pressure. But as soon as we start that, we should see it start to pull down. No doubt, that vacuum pump is good to go. You'll see as I start letting air back into here, those microns are gonna come back up to atmospheric pressure. So just so you will have a comparison of the difference between clean oil and dirty oil, before I replaced the oil in this pump, I could not get any microns on this one. The gauge on the front would not get down into the green. And the only thing that I have done is change the oil, and now we get down to 160 microns. So very, very important to have good clean pump oil in your vacuum pump. Unfortunately, a common mistake that people make is that they forget to put their valve cores back in. So we have the valve cores out while we were doing our brazing and our purging. And so you do not want to forget to put those back in, or you'll start pulling a vacuum and take your gauges off, or maybe even put refrigerant in the system and take your gauges off and everything starts shooting out at you. That makes for a bad day. So don't forget to put your valve cores back in before you start your vacuum. But once we've done that, we're going to hook our gauges back up to the system. We want to make sure that all the pressure is off before we hook up to and start our vacuum pump. If we have any pressure in the system when we turn on our vacuum pump, it's going to shoot oil all over you, and you don't want that. And so we want to make sure that all of our test nitrogen pressure is gone, so where we can release that into the atmosphere. You want to make sure that if you have any valves on your hoses, you want to make sure that those are open. We've had people in the past who have pulled a vacuum for hours and found out that they left their hose closed. At that point, you're just pulling a vacuum on your hoses and not pulling a vacuum on the system. So valve cores in, pressure out, valves open. And then we're going to hook up to our pump. And it's important that all of our hoses are good and tight. We're going to open our valves. Make sure that if we have a valve on our pump, we're going to make sure that it is in the open position. Start our vacuum. A little noisy, but once we're done with our vacuum, we're ready to shut off. First thing we do is turn off our valves. You can turn off your valves at this point to your system if you like. We're just trying to make sure we don't allow any air to reintroduce into our line, so we just pour a vacuum. I'm going to turn the valve off on my pump. and then stop my pump. So right now we're in a pretty deep vacuum there, so once we take our hose off, we'll see that disappear. Oops, I'm still in the off position. When we open our line, we'll see our vacuum disappear. But now we are ready to add refrigerant to the system. So if we're going to add to our hose, we have to remember that since we have this open, now we have air in our gauges up to this point, and so we would need to purge the air out of that before we add anything else in the system. Our hoses from our manifold down to our unit are still in the vacuum because we have these closed, and so anything that we add in there hopefully would be pure refrigerant, no air, no moisture. So one of the keys with vacuum, again, is to start it at our earliest possible time. So hopefully we'll get our line sets in and connected to the indoor and outdoor units and leak tested. And once we know there's no leaks, we should immediately start our vacuum. Don't wait until close to the end of the job. You'll start pulling the vacuum, you'll have problems, you'll find out you don't have time to pull a good deep vacuum. It's not gonna hurt the system to leave the vacuum on as long as you can. And so we want to have as much time as possible with the system on vacuum. And so don't wait. As soon as you have the opportunity to start, put the vacuum on the system and let it run.